Hi, in this video we'll learn how to graph exponential functions. I have the function y is equal to 3 to the power x. Now, if you're not familiar with transformations, if you don't know how to graph this function, then you can always go ahead and create an xy table. So you plug in some values for x and see what you get for y. So let's make an xy table here. X, y, and we'll plug in some values for x and see what do we get for y. So always try to plug in simple values. Let's start with 0, and then I want two values up and two values down. So let's have -1, -2, +1, and +2. So let's go ahead and plug in these values into the function. So for the first one, let's start with 0 here. If I plug in x equals 0 into this function, this will be 3 to the power 0. And if you remember the law of exponents, anything raised to the power 0 other than 0 is always equal to 1. So 3 to the power 0 is equal to 1. So when x is 0, y is 1. Now let's plug in x equals 1 into this function. So if I plug in x equals 1 into this function, then this will be 3 raised to the power 1, and 3 raised to the power 1 is nothing but 3. So when x is 1, y is 3. Now let's plug in x equals 2. So if I do that, x equals 2, then this will be 3 raised to the power 2, which is equal to 9. So when x is 2, y is equal to 9. Now let's say x equals -1. So y will be equal to 3 to the power in place of x. I'll write -1 here. Now, if you remember the law of exponents, anything, like if you have a base a raised to the power negative exponent, then you can write this as 1 over a to the power m. So you just write the reciprocal of this. So here I can write this as 1 over 3 raised to the power 1, and 3 raised to the power 1 is 3, so I can write this as 1/3. So when x is -1, y is 1/3. Now, let's plug in -2 in place of x. So y will be equal to 3 raised to the power -2. Now again, I'm using this law of exponent, so I can write 3 raised to the power -2 as 1 over 3 square. So it's important that you get rid of the negative exponent. So this will be 1 over 3 square, and 3 square will be 9. So when x is -2, y is 1 over 9. So we have enough points now. Let's go ahead and graph this function. So when x is 0, y is 1. So this point, I have this point here. And then when x is 1, y is 3. So x is 1, y is 3. This point, when x is 2, y is 9. X is 2, y is 9. So I won't have this in my graph. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's say 6, 7, 8, 9. Let's say this is 9. Okay, so this will be 2, 9. 2, 9. So it's this point. And this is 6, not a point here. This is 6. Okay, then when x is -1, y is 1/3. When x is -1, y is 1/3. So it will be somewhere around here. Then when x is -2, y is 1/9. So it will be this point, let's say. So it's close to 0, but it's not 0. So let's connect the points, these points here. And okay. So what do you notice in this graph? That this graph is getting close to 0. This is getting close to 0, but it's not touching 0, right? It's not touching 0. So we can say that this function is a horizontal asymptote of y equals 0. I can say that this function is a horizontal asymptote, y equals 0. Now let's talk about the domain and range of this function. So what is the domain of this function? Domain is always the x values. We're talking about the x values. So what is the domain of this function? So if you keep on going to the left direction, this graph will keep on getting, this graph will get closer to 0, 0, but it will never touch 0. If you keep on going on to the right direction, your graph will get larger, it gets steeper. That means your domain is all the real values. X could be, let's say this is negative infinity, this is positive infinity. So the domain is from negative infinity to positive infinity, or we can say that the domain is all real numbers. So domain is all real numbers. And range is, when we talk about range, it's always the y values. Range is the y values. And you can see that this is a y-intercept. This is y-intercept, and this point is 0, 1. So you see that the range is, it includes all the positive values, but does it include the negative values? No, it doesn't. That means y is always greater than 0. Because it is not 0, it's not touching 0, so the range will be y is greater than 0. And you can also think this way, that no matter what value you plug in for x, suppose if you plug in here 25 or 50 or 17 or any value, you will never get 0, because 3 to the power anything will never be 0. So no matter what value you plug in for x, your y will never be 0. The graph gets closer to 0, but it never touches 0. So that is how you graph exponential functions. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you in the next video.